So the reason I'm here is that we have a release. I've written some books in the past, and we just published my brand new book, and it's called Understanding the Sacraments. I wrote this book between 12 midnight and 3 a.m. for several weeks in a row. And what I did was I took this from our talks that I'd started doing during COVID, which was the Explaining the Faith series. When COVID hit, our doors had to close, and I think your doors closed down here too. And we had no pilgrims. We had nobody coming to the shrine. I was convinced that we were not going to survive. And I said, this is it. We'll be closing the doors to the shrine for good because we can't financially survive this way. We can't make it. But if we're going to go down, we're going to go down with a blaze of glory. So we prophetically set up live streaming and started to live stream masses, rosaries, chaplets of Divine Mercy. And I took all my seminary notes, because I took meticulous notes in seminary. And I took all of those, and I decided to say, you know what? I'm going to take my favorite time of my life was seminary, and I want to go back. If I could go back to one time in my life, believe it or not, it was not the college parties. It was not working with my own business when I had more money than I knew what to do with. It was seminary. And so I said, if I could go back to seminary, that would be my first choice. And then I could share what I would do is sit in that lecture and listen to the priest teachers that I had that taught me some of the most incredible things of our faith. And I'm not kidding you, 100 times a month I would say, I never learned that. I never learned this. Why aren't Catholics learning this? If Catholics knew this stuff, nobody would leave the Catholic Church. Nobody. If we truly understood what it is in our church and what makes the Catholic Church different than all 45,000 other Christian denominations, the sacraments. And with that, I started the Explaining the Faith series. We started sharing all my notes. I'm teaching you everything I've learned in seminary. Then EWTN called and said, we've been watching this on YouTube. We'd like you to start a show on EWTN. So we started Living Divine Mercy. We're now in our 4th season. So if you have EWTN, turn on Living Divine Mercy, because it is an absolute gift that God gave us out of the worst evil. You know, God will bring a greater good out of even the worst evil. What is the worst evil? What would you say is the worst evil? If somebody said to you, what is the worst evil? Could be many things. Abortion. Okay. Blasphemy. For me, I don't think it gets worse than suicide. Because suicide is the evil one whispering in your ear, everyone hates you. Your life is worthless. You're no good. End it. End it. Get out. Nobody loves you. The world is better without you. And the evil one gets inside and convinces you to take your life. That happened to my grandma. And it was the worst evil you could imagine. Now, if they say that God brings a greater good out of even the worst evil, what possible good could have come about from a suicide. Anybody? My priesthood. I am a priest because of the suicide of my grandmother. And when I learned that the mercy of God is greater, he told St. Faustina that if you took all the sins ever committed in the history of the world, added them together and put them together, they would be just a drop compared to the ocean that is his mercy. Has anybody here ever added a drop of water into the ocean? Notice how high it raised after you did that? It disappears. It's non-existent. It's infinitesimal. And Jesus told St. Faustina, that is like all the sins ever committed in the history of the world is but a drop compared to the ocean that is my mercy. And all of a sudden, when I learned that God's mercy is greater than even suicide, because we didn't talk about the suicide of my grandmother for 10 years, because we were always taught that if you take your own life, you automatically go to hell. So nobody in my family wanted to talk about it. And until I learned God's mercy is greater than even that, my life changed. And you know what is God's greatest act of mercy? Ever bestowed on a creature is the Immaculate Conception. But what's God's greatest mercy given to creatures? The Eucharist. The Eucharist. It's what unites our Maronite rite with the Latin rite, with the Byzantine, with all of the Catholic rites. The Chaldeans. Do we have any Chaldeans here with us? This is part of, well, actually, that's part of this. That's right. And so praise be to God for this gift. You know, the sacraments, which this book is available. We hope that you'll get it on your way out tonight. When I wrote this and I finished it, my Marian press manager came to me and he says, we need to do a world release of your book. Where do you want to start? And he said, we can start in Rome. We can start in France, because Father Chris, you've always focused on France. England, that would be a good place, Father Chris, or right here in the United States. Where do you want the world release of your new book? Where do you want to start the tour? And I said, Australia and New Zealand. I know the Kiwis and the Aussies aren't completely bedfellows, but I figured we can come together. And I said, I want to go to New Zealand and Australia. Now from here, I'm heading to England because we're opening up a brand new association of Marian helpers. I have a huge thing in my heart for Ireland, France, and England, in Europe, and New Zealand and Australia here. The key is you guys are the gateway to Asia. And Asia has one Christian country. What is it? Philippines. They are standing alone. They're going to get crushed. If it was left to economics or military, but they got something on their side. God. And New Zealand and Australia, you are the gateway to that. Just like you were in the South Pacific of World War II. You were key. You were key. And we stood with you. And we're going to do it again. And so I said, I want the world tour to begin in Australia and New Zealand. My Marian press manager looked at me and goes, huh? I said, yeah. And I came down here, and I'm not keeping any proceeds of this book. I'm donating it back to Divine Mercy Australia and Perusia to get this message of divine mercy to Australia. And so I'm not keeping any of the proceeds, even though we are still raising money. We have more seminarians today than we've ever had in the history of our congregation. We've never had so many seminarians. God, if this message of mercy wasn't important, God would not be sending. We have so many seminarians, I had to build a new monastery. 34 million American dollars. I'm still a couple million short, so if anybody has an extra $1 million laying around, please come talk to me. But the point of coming here today with the book is not about proceeds or raising money for the monastery. It's to raise money to put back into Australia. With what's happening down here in Asia, with the takeover by China and other aggressive forces, this is the answer. When a group or a government stands against Christ and stands against the sacraments, we are the last bastion. You guys. And so I fully believe in the mission of what needs to be done here. And that's why I picked Australia and New Zealand to begin, the very first stop.